Hey everyone, welcome back to It's Your Time podcast. We are officially rebranding, changing everything. As you see, the name is changing. We're actually doing video now, so you're going to be able to see our faces. I'm super excited for everything that's been happening in this coaching business world. In my world, if you've been following, there's lots of things going on, and it's such an exciting time for It's Your Time coaching. I have a guest today. It's the perfect way to relaunch the podcast. She is a dedicated mom of two girls. She's an HR expert with over 10 years of experience. She's truly a girl's girl. She's really all about embracing who you are, leveling up in your life, and having the real conversations. Get ready for honest insight and inspiring stories and just lots of laughs along the way. Paula Higgins, welcome to It's Your Time podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited. This is
I'm
gonna be good.
so excited too. I shared this on the session last night. So it's so funny because you hired me when I actually started working for the bank. And then not too long ago, you transitioned roles and I hired you. And then
Yeah,
that's kind of how you and I connected. And really, we've said it before, like we're so different in so many ways, but at the same time, on the stuff that we do connect and are very similar, it's like just it's really been amazing to have conversations with you. So super
100%.
excited.
I know we connected so quickly. And it's like
Hmm.
I immediately when we started talking, and this is even when you hired me like 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago now, I think.
Time
It was
flies, yeah.
like I know, and it was like immediately we just started connecting on some of this stuff, and it was
Yeah.
just like I loved how this has evolved, and I love having the conversations with you. So I think it's going to be fun to kind of bring people along.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like it's like we started talking and then I quickly realized like, okay, like we think very much the same for so many things, and it's very hard to find people that like share that same like kind of like deeper understanding of life. So I know it's always great to bring stuff up to you because I know that your insight is going to be like what I would like to hear or what I would tell someone.
Yeah.
um so I mentioned it last night. You're going to play a role in It's Your Time coaching. I decided to ask you if you were interested in joining, especially on the Facebook community, because I think you'd be amazing at sharing your life and your insights with people. And you agreed, which I'm extremely excited and grateful for. So I really want to get to know you. I want to, let the people know about Paula and what she's all about. So give me an overview, I guess, of your life. I do think it's important to mention that you met your husband at what age again?
So me and my husband met at we were 12. We were 12. We actually started going out, air quotes, because what does that even mean when we were 13? And then that was very short lived. And then we were just best friends until we were 16, and we've been together ever since we've been 16. So it'll be 22 years that we've been together.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
And you got married fairly young.
Got married at 24. And I was thinking about this morning because I was thinking maybe she's going to ask that. And I was like, wait, how many years have we been married for? And it is really true. Like, as you like get older and you're with somebody for so long, like dates just, I'm like, how many years was it 13? Is it 14? So it's roughly around like 14 years, I want to say 13 years, 14 years
Wow.
we've been married. Yeah.
Wow. That's so inspiring. And I think it's like, you and I talked about this because I've heard before from like women saying like, I've been with my partner since high school. I don't know anything else. Like sometimes I question if, I'm truly happy, if there's anything else out there. Like, how is this for you? Like, because you've been with the same person your entire life.
Yeah.
Like, have you
Yeah.
ever had these thoughts? Like, How's that like?
So yeah, so it's funny because when you're with somebody at that age, I mean, you're 16, and then you're graduating high school, and people are like, well, like you're not going to stay together when you go off to university and college and things like that, right? It's like almost that expectation, like, hey, high school sweethearts, like
Mm, mhm,
So we used to get a lot of that from people. And then, we got into our 20s, and then you see a lot of those relationships break down then. And I've always said that I've never had internal conflict at all about this relationship, ever. So I think that's unique. I
mm,
think, for sure. But I also think that's why it's just always been right for me. Like, it's never been something where I've questioned, is he the right person? Am I not being my full, authentic self with him? Is this somebody I can see myself with, forever? We've always said we've been like best friends first and
mm,
foremost. And
mhm.
that sounds really cheesy, right? Like when you get married, people say, I'm marrying my best friend.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
truly, for him and I, what that means to us is that we've been allowed to grow and to change. I've never felt like I've been put in a box by him.
Mm,
So he's just always been like my biggest cheerleader. So I've never had that internal conflict of like whether this is the right person. I could do any profession, I could change my looks, I can do anything. And I just feel like he would just be rooting me on. So I've
mm,
never had that internal conflict. I really like to think he's never had either. He's always expressed that we've always felt the same in that way. Um, but I think that's important. Like I would say to people, if you are having that internal conflict, like to really dig deep into
yeah.
that, right? Like,
Mhm,
are you feeling like you're being put into a box? Like, do you feel like you can't change? Are you changing in the same direction as this person? And it doesn't mean that you have to be like, you know, when you're with somebody, it doesn't mean that they have to agree with everything you're saying and everything you're doing and things like that. I don't even really look to him to agree with everything I say and do. I just know that he loves me as a person, and
mm,
that, right? So if he's like, okay, like, so you're doing that, okay, we have this trust in this relationship that we're going to grow together, and it's going to be good, and we're there for each other. So I just think that
mm.
that's such an important, when you're with somebody for that long, I just think that's really important to reflect on.
That's really great. And I think the fact that you're so like self-aware, I think you'd be able to like, if you were ever to have a thought like that, like I think you'd be so in tune with your body and your mind and your soul that you'd be like, what is this telling me? I feel like there was a point in my life where I had one thing that really was not great in my life, and I think it was making me question everything else.
Hmm.
When the problem was not with everything else, it was with this one thing. So I think sometimes it's like when people have these like thoughts, it's like dig deeper. Like, what is it like truly deep down? Is it in fact that you're maybe no longer happy in your relationship, or uh, is there like something else like more fundamental that you're maybe like missing in the picture? Yeah,
people
that's
are people
really
are really
interesting.
scared people are really scared, right, to question that, because like I've said to many people in my life who have gone through divorces and breakups and things like that,
Mhm.
it's like nobody wants to wake up in the morning and be like, this is the day I'm going to blow up my life,
Yeah.
right? This is it. This is going to be the day I'm going to make it, this big decision, and like starting tomorrow my entire world is going to be completely different. Like, nobody wants to make that leap.
Mm,
So, but I will say, like, that one decision of, okay, am I going to blow up my life? That's one day and one decision. But if you are not questioning, why you have this internal conflict, that's a lifetime. That's a
mm,
lifetime of being unhappy. That's a lifetime of struggle versus one day of saying, and of course, going through any kind of big separation or whatever, like that's going to not just be one day, but
yeah, yeah,
it is that moment of making a decision, right?
yeah,
And then you'll
yeah.
be able to move forward. But if you're
Mm,
stuck and you're having that
mm,
internal conflict, you know, you have to dig deep into that, because that's your whole life and we only get one. And I'm really, really connected to that we have one life,
One
um,
chance. Yeah.
one chance at this. And
Mm,
so just do everything you can to make it right. So, I've been really fortunate that, I found my person at a really young age. And I've never, when people are like, are you sure this is it? Like, okay, you're 24 and you're getting married. Like, for me, I am at my happiest with him. So what
mm,
am I going to do? Oh, well, yes, because you said that. I'm actually going to look elsewhere and see if I can be more happy. No, that doesn't make sense. I know I'm at my most happy. Right. So
mm.
I hope that for everyone. And I know that everyone is capable of that. Like everyone is able to dig deep and have that self awareness. It's just getting out of the fear of doing that. Right. Like you have to
Yeah.
really embrace and face your life head on.
Mm. And I've always said that, like, first of all, happiness is an internal job. If anyone is putting that burden on their partner, like, f- he doesn't deserve that. And you don't deserve to give that power to someone else.
1,000,000%.
And
1,000,000%.
to your point, like, living with that questioning your entire life is going to become heavier and heavier as the days go by. Like, I've always said this, like, just figure it out right now. Like, look into it, tap into that. Like, let's start working on it right away. Like, just you're gonna feel so relieved from knowing, like, that question within yourself. Like, yeah, so good.
Yeah. Love it.
So good. Um, we talked a lot. So I got to know you a bit more, and we talked about boundaries. And I was saying, like, oh, the month of March in the Rebuild and Thrive membership, it's all about boundaries. And I was saying how you can have boundaries with close family members, even if it's family members. Like, it is still a thing, like, to have boundaries and to respect them. You can have boundaries with friends, you can have boundaries with your partner. Like, it's all about, like, living a healthy and happy life. And you were telling me how you've had to put boundaries throughout the course of your life, and
Mhm.
you're maintaining those boundaries. Tell me a bit more about that. It's
Yeah.
I find it very interesting, and I find it very, like, people should know more about this, I think.
100%. And I think because, so for me, it's been something I've been navigating my whole adult life for sure, right? Because I think, when we're younger, we don't know how to have boundaries, right? Like when you're
Mm,
younger, you are just dealing with the world as it comes, and you're not taking that step back or have that self awareness to say, how can I, navigate this and, really protect my peace, my mental
mm,
health, my happiness. Um, we just don't have that. So as I got older, I it's boundaries are, they're so important, obviously. And but I will say, like, they come because of something that is truly hard, right? They
mm,
come out of something that is maybe that once you thought was safe isn't safe, or what you thought was, normal isn't normal. So it's hard when you are first really confronted with that you need to put in a boundary, especially when it comes to family, right? Like family, we have this idea that that's where we need to be like the most vulnerable and where we need to give the most and
mm.
always be there for them. We
And
can't let them
accept the
down.
most.
Accept everything, tolerate everything
Yeah.
regardless, right? And so for me, it was really about understanding that, first of all, it starts with knowing what I deserve, right? As
Mm,
a daughter, as as a person, as just a human in this world, like what I truly deserve in a relationship. And then it's knowing that setting a boundary is not about controlling a situation, right? It's
mm.
not about punishing somebody, right? Because I think that's what holds people back is like,
Yeah.
well, if I don't show up in that way, then they're going to be upset, and it's like a punishment to that person. And that is not how I see a boundary. I can still love you fully through a boundary, right? So
Mm,
if I am putting myself in a situation where okay, I know I'm going to spend time with this person because I truly do love them, but I need to know that, I'm going to maybe go to their place because I am going to have to really think about how I'm feeling, and I need to be able to up and leave really
Mm,
quickly at any point. I'm going to think twice about inviting people over to my space, right? And things like that. And it's really about understanding those relationships and those dynamics and saying, okay, well, how do I feel the most safe? How can I feel, the most at peace? And it's just navigating that. And it has nothing to do with lack of love, right? It has nothing to do with that. It's like you can still love these people and see them fully for who they are, but you're not like an extension of them in that relationship.
mm,
You can truly separate yourself from that, love them from afar, and change that. And it might be uncomfortable at first. Like I know in my situations with certain people in my life, like it's incredibly uncomfortable and they're not going to like it. They're not going to like when
mm.
you put up a boundary,
That was
right?
my next question. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not
Mm,
going to like it. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be something that they really push hard back at.
mm,
But you have to just show consistency in your boundary. And also, again, like from my perspective, it was never about a punishment or controlling. So I was still able to, have relationships and still express love and but it wasn't about giving up my peace. And
mm,
I think, as like I have, you mentioned I have two girls. And so for me, like, I owe them that, right? Like, I owe them to, like, for me to be my best self. So if I'm
mm,
letting all these other relationships where I don't feel safe and I don't feel, valued, if
mhm.
I'm always letting that deplete me and
Mm.
my energy, what am I turning around and then giving them? Right. So it's really
Uh,
something that's
yeah.
so important to me.
Like what you just said, like I keep saying that, and it brings me to like a similar topic, I guess, is when I hear moms saying, like, I just feel so guilty taking that time for myself and doing stuff that I love. And I'm like, don't like, you need to understand that prioritizing yourself and your mental health and your physical health, it's pouring in your cup so that you can pour more into your children's cup.
That's
Like
right.
it is so hard to get that into people's mind, and I get it because you've been at this for longer than me. Your kids are a bit older. At first, I did have that guilt, but I did it anyway, and that feeling leaving that workout class or that feeling leaving that vacation with my fiance, like I knew I needed that, and I was such a different and better mom going back to my house, like to my kid. um so important.
Yeah. So for me, I have like maybe a different perspective than some because, I grew up in a situation where I felt like I really wanted my mom to have friends and to have a
Mm,
fuller a fuller life outside of me and my sister. I wanted that for her. I think more than what she wanted for herself, maybe, or maybe she wanted that, or and she just didn't feel like she could give that to herself. I don't know, but it was definitely I felt, and this isn't putting blame or anything like that. It's really just about how I felt, whether it was intentional, which I don't think it was. I don't think it was intentional, but I often walked around feeling like a burden, right? Like as a child,
mm,
feeling like a burden, feeling like, oh, I wish, my mom did have another focus other than because I think she would be happier, right?
okay.
Versus, always feeling like she had to be there with us and had to be, giving up a bigger life, a more enjoyable life versus that like just being a mom, right? So
Mm,
I come from that perspective of I don't want that for my kids. I want my kids to really see what a balanced, happy life looks like for me as a role model to young girls, right? Like,
yeah.
and I always say, I think that the mom, especially in when you have girls, and I obviously know you have Amelia, so I think having girls especially, it's like they're really looking at you as their role model, right? Like that same
Mm,
sex parent is typically the role model. So like for a little boy it'd be his dad, but for little girls, they're looking at their mom, they're saying, how do you operate in the world as a woman? Like what does that even look like, right? And that's
yeah.
what they're looking at us for. So for me, it's like I need to show them that I have a great relationship with their dad. I need to show them that I love and really value my girlfriends in my life. Like I am really blessed that I have an incredible group of women that like they're the
Mm,
kind of friends that you like call at 3 a.m. if you need to, like I'm
yeah.
really lucky to have that. And so I want them to see those dynamics and those relationships. And for me, that's my perspective. It's honestly not even so much as for myself, even though yes, that's super important. I'm always very mindful of what I'm demonstrating for them.
Mm, that is so good. And it makes me think like, you know, I want the world for Amelia and I want her to be and do whatever lights her soul on fire. And I want to express that to her, like go out there and like do all of this stuff. But I feel like it would contradict, like if I would always be at home and spend 100% of my time and energy on her and not actually go do that myself. I'm like, she's gonna be conflicted. Like she's not gonna. I'm not gonna basically practice what I'm preaching to her. So that's, yeah, so important.
Yeah.
Um, you took a massive social media break, and like I find that so interesting. So I remember you telling me like, I just completely stopped like all of the social media world and I just really focused inward, focused on my family. Like tell me a bit more about that. Like, what drove you to do that, and what did you learn, I guess, along the way? Because you're recently like kind of getting back into it. Like, how long did it last? Like, tell me more.
So the last time I was really like for instance, the last time I like posted anything on Instagram, for instance, was almost 2 years ago.
Mm,
And so the driver behind that was really about I was thinking, I am not somebody who is affected by social media. That was like what I told myself because, I'm not somebody who looks at other people and goes, oh, I wish I
I
had
wish.
that,
Yeah.
or right. Like I never
Yeah.
felt that, like, that internal conflict that we were saying around, like, like jealousy or just like, there wasn't anything eating at me, I should say,
Yeah.
like when
Yeah.
it came to social media. However, I will say, there was always like a running I don't know, like a running script in my head almost of like, oh, I knew what everybody was doing that day, right? Like, because you go in the
Mm,
stories and it's like, oh, that person's in Disney, that person went to the beach with their family today, that person did this, and you're so in the mix of
mm,
what everybody's doing. And I was like, just that piece alone was taking up mental energy for me. So it wasn't
mm.
it wasn't that the comparison factor wasn't there, and that wasn't the driver. It was the mental energy of like, I know so much about other
About
people
everyone.
that I
Ah.
was like, I want to really narrow in on my life. We were going through some big changes. We were going to sell our house. My husband was going for a new job. We were moving my oldest out of a school that she had been to. We were going through these big
Mm,
family changes, and I was like, I want to like narrow in on what's happening here. And I called it like my 90s mom summer. Like I was like, we're going to channel like the 90s, and we're going to just like be super present and just not have that running storyline in my head from seeing everybody's stories all the time on social media. So that was the
so
driver.
good.
I think it's been amazing in a lot of ways. It got me through, I feel like, that hurdle of like those big adjustments, those big changes. Because I think if I were to have that comparison piece like that, I think I probably would have done it then, right? I would have
Mm,
felt that way then as I was making all these big changes and feeling uncomfortable and feeling all these things. So it was, I think maybe it was a boundary that I put up when it came to social media to say, I just can't take it in. I just want to really
Mm.
focus. Um, and it was amazing. It was amazing. But I definitely see now, like as I've removed myself from it, that there is still so much good there, and I've always known that there's still so much good. There's still communities out there that I really align myself with, that I think it's important to stay connected to, and to
Mm.
always kind of have that reflected back to you, so that you feel like you're part of something bigger. So there's things like that I love, and that I'm gonna dip my toe back into, obviously. But yeah, it was a good break. I'm glad that I did it.
Yeah, it's so like I was so intrigued, but I get what you're saying. Like even myself, like I'm trying, with running like businesses mostly online and having most of my clientele on Instagram, it's very hard for me not to be on there. But I do find like lately it's like I'm focusing on consuming less and like producing more. Like I'm going on there with like an intention and a purpose of I'm going on there, I'm giving out information or I'm posting something for my clientele and then I'm removing myself. Like I've been really trying to do that and it's amazing because you
I
don't
love that.
realize how much stuff that you consume and that it really does take up some space in your brain and it's hard to like turn it off after.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point. Like I think social media, like truly being intentional with it,
Yeah.
it can be a really wonderful thing. Like you have
Mm,
to have a responsibility of what you are consuming, right? Like
yeah.
if I'm consuming a bunch of stuff that, like, is giving me that feeling of like, that ickiness, that, like you're judging yourself now, you're putting other people on a pedestal, like those types of things,
Yeah.
like, when you have that feeling, like, and you have to stop in that moment and ask yourself why you're feeling that way, and you have to do something about it if you are feeling
Mm,
that way, right? You have to change that. And so I think that being intentional with it is a really great thing, being really conscious of what you're consuming. So it doesn't mean you need to take a 2-year break off of
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It's just really curating it to what is really lifting you up. I think is really important.
Mm. And it's like I often get asked like, "Oh, like have you seen this on TikTok? This viral recipe or whatever,
Yeah.
and do you have Snapchat?" And it's like I never got into it. So Snapchat, I had it like years ago, never used it. So it's like I don't even know if I still have it. TikTok, I've been on it too because I hear it's a good like business platform and
Mhm.
I've been trying to post and I did for a while but I've never consumed on TikTok. Like it's like my body was telling me like your mental capacity for like social media is at the maximum with Instagram and I had just no interest on adding anything else and it's yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I've never. So I was on Snapchat when Snapchat was first a thing, like in, like, I don't know, like 2016 or something like
yeah.
that, right? Like, so I was on it then. I've never downloaded TikTok. I've never had that on my phone.
Mm,
I know about it, obviously, and like I know, Instagram and Facebook have, like, similar. When something's viral, they're all on those apps, anyways, right? Um, but yeah, so I've never done that. You are certainly more technically savvy than I am when it comes to social media, 100%. So there is certainly things I could learn. But yeah, it's funny because once you remove yourself from it, like I feel like an old lady. Like I'm like it's changed so much. I'm like, oh no,
yeah.
I don't know how to do this.
Yeah, that is so oh my God. Um what was I going to say? So, okay, you're the way that you see like the world and the way that you think is it's like it's very much like thought of. Like you really the way you speak and what's going on in your brain like it's very um interesting to me because it took me a massive like divorce and like switch of career for me to have that snap. And it's like, I feel like you've kind of always been that person and you've I'm not saying that you never had any struggles in your life, but I feel like you've just, are you like this like unicorn like person? Like,
Yes, yes, I am. No, I'm not at all. No. So first of all, thank you. But so no, so it's two answers is yes, I think I have always been that way, but it's not
mm,
for because of no reason. Like, you know, I grew up in an environment where, you know, kind of like I shared, like I don't weren't always super peaceful. Things were not,
mm,
I, you know, I've always had the ability to remove myself, I think, from a situation and be able to really kind of analyze what's happening, even at a
mm,
really young age. And so, you know, I think that does come from trauma, to be honest. Like to be
mm,
able, you know, I've done deep dives into different like trauma reactions and things like that. And some people really consume themselves in that to say, oh my gosh, it was because of me and I was the problem. And
right.
I, and I think that's a really actually common response, right? When you hear people say that they're not good enough and they have these core beliefs around that about just never
Yeah.
being enough. Thankfully, like I've never had that was never my frame of thought. It was more around taking myself out of a situation, which, you know, as a small child and as somebody growing up is also not I wouldn't say super healthy. Like that you shouldn't have to do that, right? As a child, you shouldn't have
Yes.
to do that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, However, that is how I responded to things around me, was to take myself out of a situation and to really analyze the situation, look at people fully for who they are and not just the relationship that I was in with them, right? So
Hmm.
whether it be my parents or siblings or anybody else for that matter, it wasn't really just all about how that relationship was. It was okay, well, what are you doing over there, right? Like
Right.
why are you behaving that way? What's
Hmm.
driving that? So I've always been really interested in like human behavior, and from that definitely is around like you know it breeds self-awareness, it breeds, you know,
Hmm.
being interested in personal development and those types of things. But it's something that you know I'm always thinking about. It's something that I'm always still that same kid who is looking at my relationships and looking at people and saying, okay, like, you know, are you somebody who like, can I have a healthy relationship with you, and can I engage in this relationship, and then when do I know to pull back, when do I
Mm.
know to navigate that? And as I said earlier, it has nothing to do with love, it has nothing to do with, you know, how I feel about that person. It's just how do I kind of protect myself and protect my peace.
Mm.
So it's just it's been nothing that happened, as you mentioned, like you went through a divorce, you went through, and I know lots of people who've had similar situations as you, who, you know, you go through your whole life and you think that things are a very certain way, and you are on this journey, and then something blows up in your life, and everything that you've built up in your mind to believe
Yeah.
has totally crumbled. And so I know I have a lot of close people in my life who've had that same experience. Um, and the blessing that I think I've had is that because at a very, very young age, I've had to navigate some of this, I've always been super close to what is good for me. Like what I've
Mm.
always been really self aware. So when I get that internal conflict, when I have that feeling of this isn't feeling right for me, I've been able to navigate it so that as an adult, I haven't had this like huge awakening, right? Of what
Mm.
that was. So it's been I wouldn't say I'm lucky. Like I wouldn't say it's like, oh, that was great for me, because I've had my
No.
own journey to have to do that, right? Like it's just different. So some people have had to do that as an adult, and I've had to have those kind of more awakenings, I guess, as a younger person.
Mm. That is so like interesting how I feel like most people go through life having all of these like feelings in their heart, like, you know, feeling unhappy, feeling that fear of judgment, feeling like people are, taking advantage of them and like not valuing who they are as a person. And I feel like they live with that pain and they live with these emotions. And it's like, you don't have to. Like, you
Right.
do not have to live your life like this. And you should not live your life like this. And I think it all comes down to like, when I was going through my divorce, I could have easily said, I'm a victim here. Like, poor me. This is going to define the rest of my life. I'm going to bring this trauma into all of my future relationships, and I'm going to live in fear, and I'm going to live with trust issues and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? I don't know what was that moment for me. I think I was listening to a podcast and she said, you can let your situation break you, which it's what I had been doing up until that point. Or then she said, you can let your situation break you open. And I was like, ta-da.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this work and I'm going to figure out how to live more lightly on a daily basis. Like, how can I live with like less a burden on my shoulders and like less
I
pressure, and it's
I
tough.
love that. I love that. And I think a lot of times, like, people stay in situations and don't want to rock the boat
Mm,
in their relationships and in their life. And it is, we talked about this last night with that group, is like fear of judgment and things like that. And so, you know, I'm victim mentality is like unacceptable to me, and it for me personally it's just
yeah.
always been that way. Like, I'm always like, what am I accountable for in a situation, right? Like, what am I bringing to the table to contribute to anything that isn't going right in my life, right? Like, what do
Mm,
I own here? And that's important. It's not always just about the other person. It's
no.
really about looking yourself in the mirror and saying, what can I do better?
Yeah.
And so, I always say this to the people who are closest to me, and they know, because I'm a little harsher, I think, in terms of, my delivery on some of these things. But it's how I talk to myself, and I personally don't take. It doesn't hurt my feelings when I say, you know what, like, when I'm thinking about judgment, nobody's actually thinking of me. And I don't mean that
Mm,
like as in my spouse and my, I'm not talking about that. I'm saying like the general public, people that I work with, that I see Monday through Friday, they're not going home and they're not thinking about Paula. Like, they're just not. And do you know why I know that? It's
exactly.
because I'm not thinking about them.
Mm,
Right? So, like,
mm,
I know that if I'm not thinking about them, and I'm not, they can go and do whatever they want. And so I know that that's how that works, right? I know
yeah.
no one is staying up at night thinking about what I'm doing, what I'm not doing. Right. So
Exactly.
so it's a freedom to say, you know what, nobody cares. Nobody cares. It's a total freedom you give yourself.
Yeah.
Um, and like, when I think about it, if I do have a passing thought of somebody, right, it's usually 99.9% of the time, it's like, oh my gosh, wow, they really have it together. Wow, they're beautiful. Like, like, it's usually those thoughts where you're like, oh, like, that person's
Mm,
doing so great, and it's
mhm.
not typically the judgment that we give ourselves, right? The story that we tell ourselves of,
Yeah.
they're going to say, who does she think she is and what is she doing? Like, that's something that we're telling ourselves and we're projecting on other people. But
Mm,
I don't believe that to be true. And so we can't let things like that stop us. Like, that's where, again, like, that accountability comes into play. Is, I'm not going to allow this train of thought to stop me from doing something, right? Because now I have to take accountability that that's actually just my own judgment on myself,
mm,
right? So
yeah.
it's interesting. I think it takes time to get there. And sometimes when I tell people, like, no one's thinking of you, for some people, it's like, what do you mean? And if you're coming from a place where you don't feel good enough, right? Sometimes that's harsh for people to hear, right? It's like, what do
Yeah.
you mean no one's thinking of me? And it's like, not in the way that you think they're thinking of you, right? Like,
Exactly.
not in the way that, and again, have some self-reflection. Like, are you thinking about them? You're not.
Mm. I love that, and I love the way you think and how you approach like motherhood, because I think like your oldest, like, she's at a point in her life where she definitely understands more and she feels more. And I think the way you like ask her questions, like I find it so like interesting and inspiring to hear your stories about like how you like make her think, like how you want to know like the real deal. And it's just, I love it because I find like right now it's like we live in a world where we don't like let them speak. We don't let them like really express how they're feeling. We don't make them think like deep down. Like we just, it's go, go, go. And it's like the quickest answer, the quickest way. And it's like, I love that you
Yeah.
take that time to be like, this is what's going on. Like, tell me how you feel. Like, tell me, like, how can we make it better? Like, yeah, your way of parenting is really, really good. I love
You would
that.
you would have definitely enjoyed last night then, because yeah, she was extremely tired. I knew she was tired. She's definitely at this age now where her she's 8, so we've gone through the toddler years where her emotions were bigger than her body. We leveled out for a few years, and now she's having these kind of new insights and these new feelings. And she's out with her friends a little bit more, like so they're at school, she's having play dates and things like that, so she's really taking in the world in a much broader way than she ever has before. So
Mm,
there's a lot of feelings that come with that. And she was exhausted last night, and just her feelings, you could just see her feelings were bigger than her physical body. And
mm,
you know, last night talking, like it just reminded me of talking about boundaries, is because she was just not herself and really melting down. I could see it in front of me. She was melting down. She was way too tired. And, she was starting to say things that I knew. I can see it in her eyes. She's saying things that she it's a test, right? She's
yeah,
testing me.
yeah,
And she's testing me, but she's also almost hurting her own feelings by saying it, because it's so not who she is,
exactly.
right? So
Yeah,
she's looking at me, she's testing me, and she's not liking what's coming out of her mouth. I can tell. And so, as she was getting escalated, I had said to her, I was like, listen, you're allowed to be mad. Like, you're allowed to have this feeling. Like, you're not allowed to just say anything that pops into your head at me that's really hurtful. So I'm leaving now. I'm
yeah,
going to let you be in your room. And it is about, giving that space. And I'm not making her do anything, right? Like, my
yeah,
boundary is I'm not going to take this anymore. So I'm going to leave. You can have your feelings, right? And you can be as mad as you want. And I mean, I get super cranky when I'm tired. So I was like,
same.
girl,
Yeah.
I know what you're feeling. But I was like, but at the same time, you have to learn at the same time, even though I totally empathize with how she was feeling. I'm like, okay, but at the same time, you can't turn around and just blow up at people. And
Exactly. Yeah.
so it was just funny that, like we're constantly on this roller coaster ride, and I'm trying to teach her boundaries as well, because I want her to know, if you don't like this interaction that's happening, whether like if you're turning around and you're having that interaction with your sister, and let's say your sister's coming at you with all this, I want to know you can leave. You're actually in control. Like,
Yeah.
you can leave a situation. And
Yeah.
so she was saying that last night. She was like, I just feel out of control. And I'm like, you are in control. Your brain is telling you you're out of control. 100% you are in control. So just know that, right?
Mm,
So it's a journey. Motherhood, especially, well, my only experience is raising girls, and so I know, having boys. I have a nephew, and he's the best, but like totally different journey. Raising boys,
right.
totally
Yeah.
different vibe for sure. But I'm definitely buckled up into the roller coaster ride of motherhood right
Mm.
now, full speed.
I just find myself very fortunate that you're going through it like before me. And so I feel like by the time that I get to you're just gonna have so many insights and things to like
Wisdom.
suggest. I love that.
You're so welcome.
We're already at time. I knew this was going to happen. It's just so easy to like have these conversations with you. And it's like the more that we talk, like it brings up like more things. And I'm like, oh, it's so beautiful. I will repeat one sentence that you said that is like it really is going to hit a few people, I think, is you said, I can still love you fully through a boundary. I think this is like one of the most beautiful things that I've heard on this podcast. Um, I love that. I love that you said that. And I know it's going to resonate with so many people. So thank you for sharing that. Um, Excited to have you on board, excited for what's to come. Thank you for agreeing, for being here. And yeah, we'll
I
be
love it.
out there shortly.
Yay. I love the community you've created and that you're continuing to create. So this was like an easy yes for me. So I'm really excited.
Yay. Well, thank you so much. And we'll talk soon. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.